Yeah. I mean, do you want me to? No, I just, problem is I got to remember to do it on here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us reconvene. The public hearing is closed at 7 o'clock and the meeting of the Round Lake Village Board is now open, opening with public comment. Any hands? Ken?
Good evening. My name is Ken Kringle. I live with my wife Donna at 10 West Avenue. We've been residents of this wonderful community for about 2.5 years. And our fondness for the area has been reinforced numerous times by meeting some very wonderful people, both in the community and outside the community. With that in mind, I know you know Griffin Ridge, the community of Griffin Ridge is southernmost part of the village, is nearing completion in terms of house construction completion. And with that in mind, our residents have been meeting, reviewing our HOA bylaws, and also our responsibilities. One of the major items that keep popping up is the curtain drain that was installed in the northern loop of Griffin's Ridge. We know, and I believe you know, that it was installed in the spring of 2017. It was installed with no building permit or no board approval or no building planning approval. There were no engineering plans that we know of, and there was no oversight by your engineer or by your inspector. Importantly, the majority of the work was done in the weekend. Since that time, over the past 3 or 4 years, our residents have reported issues of some residents with water issues, some finding out that the curtain drain was actually installed on their private property instead of the easements that the village and Belmonte had agreed upon. And then we found out that the curtain drain wasn't working properly, and the reason being it was crushed, at least in one major area. Since that time, we have met with Peter Belmonte, and actually your inspector, Peter Sheridan, was at that meeting a couple months ago. Mr. Belmonte assured us that he was going to repair the curtain drain and that he was going to redrain the curtain drain, which meant that he was going to correct the piping to place it on the actual easements instead of the personal property. Since that time, we haven't heard from either Peter Sheridan or Peter Belmonte. And I was hoping Peter would have some update for us. But he isn't here this evening.
Mr. Kringle, Mr. Kringle, I just want you to know, I shared with Gary Putnam when I joined. I'm Nadine Shadlock. I'm Peter Belmonte's counsel. I'm the attorney that works with the project. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to share with you, Peter had to be at a planning board meeting in northern Saratoga County, or he would have been here tonight. He learned of this, I believe yesterday, that this was, we did not realize it was on, but he expresses that he would love to have been here. And he asked me to please listen and, see what knowledge we can gain and how we can work together to get all this rectified. But I think we're on the same page.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
to be quite honest, I sent Peter a copy of these bullets.
Yes, he
Yes,
shared it with me. I have it. Yes, thank you.
okay, thank you. So there are still some existing problems to date, and we don't know where we really are, so we would encourage and request that the board also, if possible, since you are the municipal authority, to keep us updated as well as possible. Because of the faulty curtain drain, we are requesting the village board's assistance in the help, specifically for the repair. What we'd like to ask the board is to require Mr. Belmonte to file building permits for the repair and the relaning of the curtain drain within the designated easements. We'd also like to have the village board request that the village submit engineering as well as hydrologist reports for your engineer and inspector to review and approve. And once approved, we would ask that the project be properly monitored by the village engineer and inspector. We also know that the HOA was actually created and approved just briefly after the drain was installed. Unfortunately, giving the 49 potential Griffin Ridge residents responsibility for maintaining a flawed drain. Because of that, we are also asking the board that we intend to amend our bylaws in that we would request the village to assume curb drain maintenance. We feel this is a fair and reasonable request. And we know you have to take this item under consideration. But at the same time, any immediate comments would be appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Nadine, did you?
Yeah, no, what I would really like to say is that we had, I realize I was at your last meeting also. And, along with Peter, I did listen very closely. We have been working during that interceding period. We added we have another engineer we have on board assisting us that we have great confidence in that can help us along with Jason Dell to come up with a solution here. But Peter wanted me to express there is no way in the world we are not going to see this through, with you. And we want to work with you. One thought we had, and I don't know how everyone feels about this, would it be helpful if we had, for instance, a routine written communication? I think we probably have all of your email addresses to update you on what we're doing. It isn't something that we have an update every day by any means, but we certainly do have regular updates and thoughts about how to approach this. Would it be helpful to the community if we initiated that?
It certainly would be a positive step.
Yeah. And another thought we had, because there is a need to communicate. And I don't know that a public hearing or a public forum is necessarily what we need all the time. Would you, as a group of homeowners, all looking out for the best interests of your community, would you as a group of homeowners possibly have a person who we would be able to reach out to and share more of the fine details of what's going on for input? And then possibly you could be an interface to communicate back to the members on topics. Would there be any person among you that might be interested in that? We really would appreciate a conduit to be able to communicate, and we really don't have that now. And if we want to advance this, I think everybody does. I think it might make a lot of sense that we consider doing that, but I leave that to you.
I would certainly take it upon us convening a meeting and searching for the best person possible representing our community.
Okay.
That would be great.
No, that would be great. Somebody that we would be able, when something comes up, somebody we would be able to call and say, we're considering this, run it by them. We would really like to have that level of communication into the group of homeowners. I think we really believe we're going to achieve the best result. We're having some, barriers to communication, inefficient communications will kill just about anything. We don't want that. We want to find solutions, and we believe we have a path forward here. But I think the communication with the homeowners, with the emails, as well as a point person, if you would be so kind as to let us know who that might be, we would like to do that very much, if that makes sense to you.
I can certainly address it with the residents, as soon as possible.
Okay, that's wonderful. I know you can.
Excuse me, my name is John Latin, and I'm one of the group in the Griffin's Bridge area subdivision. That's a very positive suggestion, but I also suggest that somebody from the village be a part of the communication process.
Sure.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's fine.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And whenever action is expected to be done by Belmonte to correct these problems, we'd like it to be done in the proper fashion with the building permit application, the engineering plans attached to them, and notify the village, obviously, and have them partake in the correction process.
Yeah. I think Peter's going to be the one to, best speak to a lot of the points, but I think the concept of the email communications plus the point person And of course, including, the village, makes great sense. And I think that is a wonderful starting point, for progress going forward.
We
I
agree.
think okay. That's perfect.
Okay, I'd like to chime in here and say something, repeat something that I think is crucial to understand, and that is that the curtain drain is on private property, both HOA property and the property of one or more of the individual landowners, and the village is prohibited by law from investing money in resolving that problem.
Mr.
We simply
Peterson,
cannot do that.
my understanding, Mr. Peterson, is that curtain drain should have been on easement property provided by the village and Belmonte Buildings, not on personal property. That curtain drain that is on personal property, it is not properly placed. That's one of the problems, number one. Number two, whatever problems that Mr. Belmonte and the individual homeowner have, that's between them, and they certainly have a right to pursue it. And Mr. Belmonte has indicated every willingness to take care of those particular problems. But what we're talking about is the obligation of the homeowners association in Griffin's Ridge to maintain the drain. We don't know where it is, but obviously there are a number of problems that have been exposed that we're looking for a future solution. But the village has got to be part of that solution. They just can't wash their hands of the situation. They have to review the plans. They have to have their engineering look at them. They have to have their building inspector look at them. They have to have you look at them and say that they're okay to proceed.
Yeah.
And that's what we're asking you to do, be part of this project.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments?
Gary, how many email addresses do you have? Do you have everybody's email address?
Oh, in Griffin's Ridge,
Because I think
fairly close.
Mr. Belmonte's council has suggested getting an email list circulated.
Yep.
I believe the last time that Mr. Belmonte was here, he suggested the same thing,
Yeah.
and I don't think anything came of it. So I think
Well, something's going to come of it this time.
My wife has started an email on this, all that kind of thing. She's updating it daily and she
okay.
hears of new people coming in, so there's some contact.
Okay, so I'd just like to see some follow-up on that to make sure that that is taken care of this
If
time.
there's a contact here, we could send it to
Yeah.
them.
And that was also brought up in, I believe, like January or February of 2020. We
Yes,
had
I was just looking at the minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
February 2020. or
Right,
something.
and we got some communications and then sort of everything stopped.
Yeah, and that's a meeting, I believe it was a planning board meeting, as I was there, and there was a commitment to keep you guys in the loop by email, and
Yeah.
clearly that has not taken place, so whatever the
Who would that
village.
be sent to?
How would,
The clerk
yeah,
for the
yeah,
village.
maybe
Yeah.
you can get in contact.
And I have Peter's, we could send the active dynamic list. we could have, and then for here. and then we
Yeah,
could
send a
it
copy to here so we can double check it against our master list.
And make sure that we're made aware that that.
Ms. Shadlack, we have the email list, Mr. Copeland has it. We could send it to Mr. Belmonte because we have his address, but we also send it to you if you want to give us your email address.
Yeah, we would really like to have that email list. That would be tremendously helpful. Then we won't miss anyone. And whatever was not done in the past, I can't speak to, but I will tell you that we are committed to move forward in a productive manner. And I think it's in everybody's best interest. So we'd be very pleased to have the list.
We'll send it to Mr. Belmonte.
And just copy.
Okay.
Yeah,
And a copy to
The clerk. Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
So that's it.
I have a copy of
Perfect.
the points, Ken, so if I could just give you a copy, request that you add this.
I
to
wrote
the
everything,
minutes.
but this is just.
Could have saved time.
Either, Gary, if you could send it around through the office email or give us a copy.
Okay, moving on to report superintendent. John can't be here tonight.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm looking forward to working together, with everybody. And very grateful to you for your courtesy and your cooperation.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye now.
Good night.
Good night.
Veterans Committee, we had a very nice Veterans Day ceremony. Thank you to the Danielle and the rest of the Veterans Committee. Treasurer's report.
I emailed everyone a copy of the balance sheet with the attached revenue and expense accounts on the back of it. It does look different. If anyone has questions about it after looking at it, then let me know and I can try to answer them for you.
We're transitioning to new
Yes.
financial
Yeah,
software
we're
updated.
with the new software, so. But I don't need any resolutions this month, or just the abstract. And that's it.
Okay. So, Chief.
Like every month, I'm telling you, we're busy. 53 calls last month. By the end of this week, we'll have surpassed last year's call total. Matt, you asked last time about how we compare to 19.
Yes.
We'll probably be ahead of 19. We're running about 12-14% up right now. Back in 19, we had a couple months where we had storms. So we had a lot of extra calls, but even with that, back in 19, we should also pass. We got our new boat, finally came in. That came in last little over a week ago. We sold the old boat to Waterford Affluent, which they will be picking up tomorrow. We have ordered a new Argo, which won't be in until springtime because of their production delays. At which time we will see a little over 20 years old at this point. Halloween, we came down here with the truck. It worked out very well. Everybody had a good time. And doing that again next year. Kim's talking about Santa. Santa was tentatively scheduled for the 4th. So we will bring Santa again. The 3rd will be Carlson Spot. For their parade, they're going to have it this year. This past weekend, some of you were around. We did training down in the village. You'll probably see us a little bit more. I was telling Kim today, practicing with the ladder truck on where and how to set it up differently. This place works out very well. You can do it down here. You can do it anywhere. The hotel is a piece of cake compared to the library. So different spots in the village over the next 2 months. One of our guys is down in New York City right now. He's been down there for almost 20 years. Back up at Beaches. One of his jobs down there is driving their ladder trucks. So he comes up there and gives us pointers on what he's doing down there. And this is Rick Burke. He's their second assistant chief. Wanted to see what a village meeting is all about. So they're running for a while. So he'll be back to one good one sooner or later. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Code enforcement is under the weather, parking enforcement. No report from the parking enforcement officer. Things have been very quiet. Same with animal control. Moving on to old business, auditorium use policy. Is there any update on that?
I thought we were going to talk before the auditorium manager and the auditorium use policy about what we wanted to do with the auditorium.
I was under the impression that you and Matt were going to get together and discuss it. Okay. Well,
Yes, as
all
after
right.
we decide a direction for the auditorium, as we discussed last time.
All right, auditorium manager position. I'm going to briefly read what I sent you folks via email. Last season, we had 2 managers with differentiated duties. Proposal I'm putting forward continues this model with a global manager for larger outside events and a local manager handling local use, including the community room. I think Tom raised some concerns about the community room use, so this will address those concerns. I strongly believe that 2 managers will address the issues that we face. The documents that you have, the colors on them, are the updated operational costs of the auditorium from 2017 to date. What I did to update them was I took out the revenues that shouldn't have been in there, the money from markets and Wireless that weren't directly auditorium revenue. So those are the updated numbers there. The second page is the analysis of what the 2021 season would have cost had we paid Dan, who is our technical guru for the auditorium village events, if we had paid Dan upstate non-union rates. So this will be helpful for budgeting going forward. Next is the job description. I think at the last meeting, I said I would start working on job description for the managers. I broke it down into two. One is the global auditorium management job description. You have, that's pages 3 and 4. And pages 5 and 6 are the local auditorium management job description. Heidi and I agree that we need to move on the manager's position as soon as possible. And as I just mentioned, the office staff is already overloaded learning new financial and utility software. And it's not fair to expect them to take on the load of managing community room and auditoriums, as has been happening. As for the overall direction of the auditorium, I think we are pretty much agreed on some large events as well as local events. There are lots of details to be worked out on the larger events, which to me speaks to the need for which argues for having a local manager to handle some of the load. I had included a, just off the top of my head, tentative budget, because that was one of the things that we had talked about last time. And notes on the spreadsheet were, let's see, orange was carpe diem, yellow was yellow highlights showed a loss, but they actually made money from donations that weren't attributed to them. Yellow, no, green, the green shows made money and the red lost money. This is, again, including, had we included Dan's time at the non-union rates. He had provided a spreadsheet with the number of hours that he had worked over the last few years, actually. So having said that, that's all I have to say on that. So we should begin discussion on that.
Okay,
No.
well, first of all, I didn't say that I thought we should move on the auditorium manager as soon as possible. What we
You said by
discussed in the-
December.
Right.
That's
By
as
the
soon as
end,
possible.
by next, by
That's
the
as soon as
beginning
possible.
of the year, that we should be hopefully knowing what we're looking for so that we can look for it. We didn't have 2 auditorium managers last year. We had an auditorium manager and somebody who's handling marketing.
They were called a marketing manager.
They were handling marketing, they were not managing the auditorium. So that was not 2 auditorium managers.
It's a job description.
And it doesn't matter, they weren't managing the auditorium, they weren't involved in any events other than go do the advertising for X. I'm not sure why it would, what the problem is with having one manager and why the solution of dividing it in 2 like this, what would be, what problem would that solve?
Well, it would solve a number of problems. If we're going to expand the auditorium use, there's going to be an awful lot of opening and closing up of the auditorium. And if we have someone who's also out there looking, trying to work with proctors and all these other things, they're going to have an awful lot of work on their hands. Figuring out parking arrangements and advertising and trying to focus on making it a managing the larger events. That's going to take an awful lot of time.
So we have a different focus than we've had in the past.
No, that's what we had been doing in the past.
We had 1 auditorium manager, who was in charge of local and larger events.
Well, you can say she was in charge of local events, but that didn't really work out too,
Why
in
not?
my opinion.
Why not?
Well, for one, she lives 30 miles away, and having someone around to unlock and lock the auditorium for people who want to use the auditorium is certainly not very convenient.
So the locking and the, so the locking and the unlocking of the auditorium was the issue and the reason we need to have two auditoriums.
Well, if you look at this, clearly, it has not been a successful venture so far. The local events have not lost money. They've all basically paid for themselves with donations. What's lost money is the large scale events. That is what I think the global operation manager should be focusing on.
The auditorium manager was never asked to turn a profit. The auditorium manager was asked to create a season with events that would bring in people to the auditorium, whether it was local or larger. To a lesser or greater extent, that happened. There has certainly been a little more up and down with the pandemic. But
The pandemic year was it was the year that we,
well, I think we've kind of had 2 years of that. But
well, that was
before
that was the year that we
okay,
made,
excuse
lost
me,
the
you're-
least
you're
money.
interrupting me. She was asked, and Terry and Rachel were before, asked to create a season. They were not asked to turn a profit. They were said, here's a budget, go spend it. Nobody has ever asked them to turn a profit. One of the things we did ask them to do was try out some different ideas. Both Terry and Rachel and Adrian after them attempted to do that in their own way. Some were more successful than others.
So-
I don't think if we talk about a budget somewhere, depending on the year, between, the most recent one was lower, but between $12,000 and $15,000. I know that I remember asking Dixie if we could have a $12,000 budget, and I don't think it's been less than that. If we look at the losses, it's in the general range of that. So when we say this has never turned profit, yeah, but who was asking them to? We were asking them to have events that would serve the community in the area. And no, that's
It would never
certainly the
occur.
direction that I understood.
Well, I don't recall giving any direction to it. It would never occur to me that somebody would intentionally program stuff that would lose money.
They were intentionally programming things that it didn't necessarily make a profit, because
But
you were
year after
having
year
events.
after year after
Yes,
year,
yes.
5 years running.
More.
But
all
anyway,
of them, all of them.
if I can just
Okay,
say one
all of
thing.
them have lost money.
If
Every
I
single
can
one.
say, one thing, the,
Yes.
so this actually illustrates why a global operation manager needs to dedicate their time to researching and figuring out ways to not lose money and not have to worry about the local stuff, the community room and the auditorium use.
You don't have to have any events and you won't lose any money. The point of having a season, a summer season, was to have events that people could go to and enjoy, whether it was children's events or organ concerts or whatever. They were not necessarily there to make money. Not even necessarily. They were never asked to make money.
Okay,
ever.
so going forward, are we saying that the auditorium manager is expected to turn a profit?
I hope not.
I think the big disconnect with it is that we booked programs and nobody's shown up, or very few people have shown up for a lot. You know, so that's why they lose money. And I think one of the things, again, we talked about this the last time, but if we're going to have shows where we're expecting 100 people to show up and 10 people.
Mhm.
That's, you know, that's where there's a disconnect right now. I mean, so we're paying for somebody where we're thinking 100 people may show up and only 10 people show up. That's a problem. And that's a problem that really, in my opinion, lands at the foot of the person managing the auditorium. Because their job is to bring, not to just book the shows and say, I'm done. It's to book the shows and then bring people to the shows that have been booked.
Right, so there's an
So,
advertising issue.
yeah, so in terms of profit and loss, I agree with you, that this thing's probably never going to make money and we're always going to lose money, but I think, you know, there needs to be, that delta needs to be shrunk. Now, in terms of the two managers, I'm a little skeptical of it myself. The two concerns I have is, number one, I think it's, you know, managing the calendar between two different people, while it can work in theory, I don't know that it's going to work in practice. I think it can be difficult, especially if those two people don't happen to communicate frequently or get along. You know, especially if there's two different liaisons also, that presents problems. And then the second issue I have is that we already have said that it was a lot of work for a little bit of money. And in this budget, you know, the global operations person is proposing, and I know you said this is just numbers you were throwing out, but the proposal is to pay them half of what the prior auditorium manager was making. And so those are the two, I think, 2,500 versus 5,000, if I recall correctly.
I don't think so. I think it's,
Yeah, at one point it was, and then she was peeling off parts so that like advertising could be done
Yes,
by marketing
right,
by someone else.
Right, but then even the total is 4,000, which is still less than what we were charging before. So
Right.
not charging, but giving. So those are my two concerns with it. Is how do we, is it possible for two people coordinating local and larger programs to collaborate in such a way that there isn't an issue with the calendar? How does that work? What does that look like? And then number two, are we setting ourselves up for failure by paying two people to do? It seems to me like we'd have to pay two people more money total than it would cost, than it would be to pay one person to do the whole role. That's my, I don't know if that's accurate enough, but I think that's my feeling.
well, we're expanding a little bit to address Tom's concerns about the community room use.
Yes,
And to be honest, the local position, I think, is financed by the donations that come in.
right.
If I just might add my 2 cents, I have some concerns about it too, but they're not the same. I don't share the exact same concerns, although I think items and Matt's points are well taken. The couple of decades I've been on the board, I don't ever recall anybody ever being asked to move from. I think it was the whole intention to get the thing used, to give people something to go to. And we always knew these would not be ticket items, either in revenue producers or loss producers. Just to use the book and create opportunities for the community to go. But one of the main concerns I have is that in separating the local manager from the global manager, in the directive here, the auditorium operations manager, the global manager, will oversee operations subject to directions from the mayor and consultation with trustees. In the description of the local auditorium manager, the local auditorium manager will oversee operations of the auditorium subject to direction from the mayor and consultation with the global operations manager. No mention of the village.
Throw the village board in there then.
Well, and that's part of my point is that as a trustee, we set policy, budgets, rules, regulations, we operate that facility. And I would be advocating my responsibility if I did not have some participation in what was going on.
I think that was just something that got cut and pasted.
Okay,
That
well,
should have been in there.
I just know what I'm reading. So, there was
Again, this
some-
is a draft for comment. That's
Okay,
the whole
okay,
idea. of it.
And good. There was some other points I just looked at. There was marketing plan and managing free tickets for the global manager. There was no marketing or managing of free ticket sales for the local manager. The marketing and publicity, there were no funds attached for the locals, but there were funds sourced from the auditorium marketing budget for the global. So I'm confused then as to what are we doing with a local manager? And what kind of events are we talking about? How are we gonna, how's that person gonna manage?
Well, what I had envisioned was things like trivia, open mic, the Whirlist and the local things that really don't require a whole lot of.
And we don't have
advertising.
anybody that attends these kinds of things from outside of the village? Very few.
Night of illumination, not really. That's not something. The barbecue probably.
I see what you're trying to do and that you're trying to take some of the load off of the auditorium manager so that they can focus more on having successful art events. I think one potential middle ground or idea is have somebody that's subordinate to the auditorium manager who would act as a person to coordinate the local events on their behalf. That way, the auditorium manager is still overseeing the entire calendar. The auditorium manager is responsible for, putting the entire season together. But there's somebody that's local that can do the sort of the grunt work that is required with the local events. I think that's something, to take that sort of responsibility off of that person. I could see something like that. I don't think there needs to be, for want of a better word, two co-equal managers, because to your point, the local stuff doesn't require as much attention. But if there was some sort of stipend for somebody to handle the local and take a little bit of the workload off of the overall auditorium manager, I think that would be something that I, in theory, support. But in terms of having, I've just seen this movie before where you have two different people trying to handle one certain, unless there's somebody, I know, and again, I know they report to the mayor of the board, but I think you need to have some point person to coordinate the entire thing. Otherwise, it's going to end in there's going to be a lot of issues.
I think there'll be a lot of logistical issues. I think there'll be a lot of confusion. And going back to Matt's point, I do think that it's almost like creating the possibility of creating a possible conflict. But not necessarily.
Well, the calendar issue, I don't think is, that's a good point, Matt. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea, but the calendar issue is easy. We have access to it. We always check that. There's shared access to the calendar.
I'll just
so-
give you one example, and it just came up recently. The issue between using the auditorium in the month of October for the Halloween event versus booking it for global events. Now, if you have two different managers where there's two different sets of vested interests, that can create potential conflict. It's just an example of something that I can think of off the top of my head. Whereas if you have one auditorium manager who works in collaboration with the board, they can make that decision about what kind of events we're going to show and when, what the makeup is, and handle that overall calendar. That's one example that I'm just thinking of that could potentially result in a conflict if you have two sort of co-equal, positions. I think if you put the local person subordinate to the auditorium manager, and again, it doesn't require a lot of extra work. So I think there'd be people in the village that would be interested in handling that, especially for stipends. I think that would be a potential solution to this, and then enable the auditory manager to handle the events that require more complexity, require the parking plans, require what we're going to do with traffic, require how we're going to get people to the events, the marketing, so on and so forth.
would the local events be subject to the same rules as the global events? In other words, if you wanted to have an open mic night, 3 hours, we charge people to use the auditorium, X number of dollars. So we're saying the local events would be exempt.
That would, I think, fall more under the auditorium use
That was
policy.
kind of one
That's-
section. Yeah, that's where we would work. Yeah, yeah.
Because there's already a set of rules on the rental side of it.
Yeah.
But we don't have a set of rules for the, what we're calling the
Local use.
local use.
Yeah.
I think there was a general sense from our last conversation that, if it was an open to the public
Right.
events, similar to what would go on in the community room, that we would be comfortable
Yeah, absolutely.
running that for donations only or what have you, and no fees attached. So I think that would be, again, once we've decided that that's definitely what we want to do, then Heidi and I could draft that into the policy.
I think having the policy in front of me would help me make
Well,
a
it's
better
figured
decision
out,
on
right?
that.
Yeah, well, what's your feeling on it, Tom? Is that kind of your general sense of, like, your feeling? I think we discussed this last time, if it is similar to the community room, it's open to the public.
Yeah.
It's a local
Oh, yeah.
event. Okay, so we can go ahead.
I think so.
And-
And I think Gary would agree. These two documents with separate management, they have to kind of be married in some way because there's cleaning is addressed for one group. But on the other side, there's no cleaning responsibilities. So you have to, they all have to kind of work the same. But I would rather see the use plan in front of me and then create this. And see if there's a real need there. Or someone who's at a lower rate, who would run one aspect of
Yeah,
it.
calendar concerns me with two.
Yeah, you get a big fucking heads and you got AP and they meet October. You can almost envision the disaster.
What do you think about my idea with the, you think it's
Yeah, I
a?
think it's fine.
Well, I like that because the person doing the local events would have to obviously have the approval of the local
Yes.
person. The local person say, well, I want to have this event, but you want to have this event, and it comes to there.
Yeah.
Village board deciding whether we want our local event to be held or a larger. I like that idea.
I think the village board ought to have oversight
Yes.
in some fashion. I mean, obviously, no one's gonna say go to open mic.
Right.
But we ought to know what the calendar looks like.
Yeah.
So you might squeeze open mic or trivia or something like
It's
that.
a shared Google Calendar. We can all have access
Yeah,
to it.
All right.
But we
So,
have brought, the auditory manager has brought things, that's how we ended up talking about the witches.
yes.
Because we need to have, if there's any question, it needs to come across.
The other thing is that, I know this is, maybe trite to some people. We're asking somebody to do an awful lot of work. June, July, August, pretty much every day, something down there, up wherever they live, who knows? And over the winter, field phone calls, contracts, details, back and forth with Gary, back and forth with. Seems to be paying them nothing.
I have no concerns about getting people to do it.
Getting people to do it.
I was wondering, do we, if we're looking at larger events, do we have to give a stipend for an event? Do we offer the auditorium manager even a percentage, or is there some way we can?
One of the ideas I had was,
Just saying, I don't really how we get to do this.
one of the ideas I had just kind of floated is you have a set stipend and that, 20% of whatever money you bring in. Yeah, something along those lines, some sort of, well, there should be some sort of incentive, right? But, I don't know whether that's, but I agree that, it's certainly the way that the numbers were thrown out here, I think it's gonna have a very difficult time getting somebody to do that global role for $2,500, regardless of whether somebody else takes all of the local events. So I think that's something we can talk about more in terms of what that number should look like.
And And I also,
Whatever,
right,
$40,000.
you're not gonna get 40 grand.
Yeah, right. But, because at the end of the day, it is somebody that hopefully that it has a vested interest in making the auditorium successful. And as we do, we put a lot of work into what we do here with the village board, and it's not.
But keep in mind, there's also Dan.
Oh, and then,
I was gonna mention that, is that regardless of what we discuss here, you ought to get a very good, raise, very nice raise. I mean, for what he does over there, he's the guy who's there all the time. And I don't know whether you do that now, you wanna work that out this month or something, because I know not much is going on.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know what we give him now, 1,000? That's
We
terrible.
were given 500.
Yeah, I know.
I doubled.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, he could be getting five.
Yeah, there's no
four or five.
4,000 in the
well, the number Gary put
It
in.
isn't, that doesn't cover what, you know.
Right, well, that's my point, is it's never going to for any, these roles are, essentially a little bit of volunteering with some money attached to it. I mean, that's it, that's called what it is.
I mean, that was based on the hours that he submitted
Right.
for.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
totally
a
get it.
labor of love.
We're never gonna be able to pay him
Right.
what his actual
Right.
worth is. I totally understand, but we should be paying
More.
more than what we are. And again, I think, and if we are gonna have somebody that wants to bring in some unique programming and work on, making sure that we attract the types of, for a couple of larger events that, we don't have 20 people showing up, paying somebody $5,000 to host an event and there's nobody there. The artists don't even want to see that. They don't want to play in a crowd of 20 people. So I think there needs to be more attention paid to that, and therefore there probably needs to be more money invested. But I do think that if we do throw a little bit more money at that position, that will recoup that in terms of losing less money on some of these events. So I think net it'll probably be very similar in terms of what our annual expenditure.
I think we're gonna break it out of the whole package. And just break this out, break this like,
Yeah.
and do a separate, whoever does do it. Get it out.
He has his own contract.
Yeah, yeah,
for the fact.
right, but when does that expire?
It's seasonal.
It's seasonal.
So if we are going to move forward with hiring an auditorium manager, this is the start of the job description. Do we have any things we want to add? I just added experience negotiating contracts. I don't, it just occurred to me in our discussion here.
But I think we were going around about that again, are we, what comes first? What comes first? The direction, the use, the job description, what? what's
Well, I
the
think
order?
The direction, I think we can agree on now, some large events and some, yeah. I mean, we're not going to be able to fix a number to it. And,
Okay,
but we have to start somewhere.
okay. So then what comes next? Use and then manager?
Well,
No,
yeah, I
job
mean, if
is-
I was if I was applying for the job as a manager, you want to know what I was getting into. It would seem like to reverse it, say, here's a job description, we don't really know what we're gonna ask you to do.
Well, the hard parts we know.
But yeah.
I mean, I think we really should spend some time fleshing this out.
Yeah.
For the local use, I think Matt's idea was a great idea, that, that part, the pain in the neck, daily stuff going over, unlocking, locking, that doesn't have to be included in the global or in the chief auditorium manager. But I mean, I think if we're going to try to get somebody by the beginning of January, we really have to solidify a job description and
Yes.
think up some interview questions, things like that. So
I mean, I think this is fairly solid. Probably a couple of different things we could kind of go back and forth on. I think you and I can work on the use between now and the next time. I guess, like, for instance, we just change it to with the local auditorium manager, or to supervising local auditorium manager or something like that.
The other thing is, and when we develop these drafts, we've got to put them on our website for meetings, so people know that, we're gonna discuss the auditorium, but here's the specifics of what we're discussing, so the public has an idea
yes,
in advance, Because I know Scott might like something. Tell us something. Sure.
To Tom's point, is the cleaning for the larger events, is that under the rental policy? I was trying to recall, and bring it up. To find out what was in there.
I think it's supposed to leave it room swept. You're supposed to leave it in the condition that you found it. You're supposed to take away garbage.
So that's probably why the cleaning is not included in the description.
Because that would be the rent. That answers.
Or could it just been something I
But
overlooked?
room swept is, where you should have someone.
Gatekeeping, as we talk about, like. Yeah. And then, when you and Matt talk about the operating use policy, and also to provide the global manager with some guidelines. We decide, I know we talked about not having, forget which week it was, there was like,
Yeah.
several events in one week.
Yeah.
Did we want to limit it to, no more than one event per week, one event for every 2 weeks, or, anything beyond that would have to be discussed. Make sure that we're
I
not.
know there was at least one season where she was attempting not to do Friday and Saturday nights in the same week. So I think there's been a couple different things tried. I think we can revisit that.
Yeah.
So it's not to bombard people in that.
Yeah, I don't want to see people bombarded with the same kind of noisy stuff.
Yeah.
For 3 or 4 nights, and 4 or 5
Yeah,
nights.
no, not at all.
I mean, if it's, if there's one, it's noisy, but there's one that would have some noise versus a poetry, that would be okay to have 2 events a week, because obviously poetry is not going to be the top of the vocals.
Or maybe you say no amplified.
Yeah.
No
No,
amplified.
music 2 nights in a row, or on Friday, Saturday, something like that. I don't know. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think it's something that should be.
Yep.
in the use policy.
Right, because we don't want to hire the global manager and forget all of the things that, was brought up, that we want to make sure we
Absolutely.
keep in mind, and then have them go out and start doing things. We're like, "Whoa."
Okay, so the deal that Matt and I come back with an auditorium use policy by the next meeting, draft here.
And some potential interview questions. We'll have to post this. and-
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, all of us think about interview questions.
Yeah.
You send them to me or Kim and we'll collate them. Pass them around.
I was gonna say, you and that,
Can't have 3 together though.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Switch off and on.
3 people together is a board. meeting.
I didn't know that. That's all I knew every day.
Yeah. All right, so under new.
Can't go to Liz.
Yeah, right. No, social events are okay. Under new business, we have no new business. Correspondence, we have no correspondence. We do have correspondence. Spoke too soon.
One of them is an auditorium request. This week's auditorium request, actually, I sent it to Heidi and to, was regarding a Discover Saratoga Destination Guide. What do we want to? And you guys can look at it. I'll send it to you.
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
that was, I
A lot
looked
of
at it.
caps, a lot of caps.
I looked at it, and it looked like a
A lot of
marketing,
yelling.
it was a glossy marketing brochure. And they wanted the materials by November 21st, which is 4 days from now.
Okay, so they were printed, the 22 editions is being printed. in-
February 22nd,
Yeah.
February 22, but materials were due by
Oh,
November 21st.
too late.
Too late. I'll rip that up.
And we'd have to pay to be included in it, so
Yeah.
Oh, I forget
a
that.
little too fast.
Second, I had a visit by a gentleman who is a volunteer at Grant's Cottage. And next year is the 200th
200th.
anniversary of Ulysses Grant's birth. And they're having a grand celebration, June 18th. And this gentleman walks around the village a lot and goes to Leah's and all that. And he was floating the idea, and this is a kind of a crazy idea, but he was wondering if he could borrow the multi-seat golf cart and bring it up to exit 16 so they could use it, because they don't have any funds. And I said I would bring it, to the board.
Because it's
And
an
made no
elderly,
promises.
it's an
and asked how
elderly
he-
clientele. and
Asked
they
how he
wanna-
would bring it there, and it was,
If they keep it.
he
they
knows
can
it's a
bring
long
it.
shot, but I know, I mean, it's, it was kind of a.
Who would pay to transport it up there?
Oh, I know, I said, didn't you call Alpenhaus, because that's where we rent. Maybe that would be.
A rental.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
Never hurts to ask.
It never hurts to ask. He said it wasn't a formal, he
But
said
the
it was
answer
a
is no.
casual request.
Yeah.
Casual request.
Well, that's not, it's not as easy as throwing a regular golf cart on a trailer to take it somewhere.
I know,
That's-
I know.
that's a
I told him
process.
that, I told him that.
Drive it right up there. Only take you a couple hours.
Plates on that.
Long extension cord.
Wow, yeah.
He also wanted to know if they could get a copy of our photo grant here in the village.
Yeah.
And I said I would ask. I showed it to him, and he,
$1.50.
no.
Okay, approval of minutes.
I will move to approve the minutes from the public hearing on October 20th.
Discussion?
Who seconded it? All
Aye.
Is there another? set?
Yeah.
right.
The board meeting is the same.
Oh, I know, that's it, yeah,
Second.
Discussion?
Which one are we on?
the regular.
October
Meeting
20th.
7 o'clock. There was a public hearing at 6:45 and that's separate minutes.
All right, so we're about the 20th,
Yes.
Yes.
the regular meeting.
Yes.
Could we change the policy violation, could we kick out that it was a movie? Can we just say a movie?
Can we say what?
Can we just say that it was a movie? Kick out the movie.
Sure.
I have no problem with that. We'll just say approved with small edit.
Yes.
All I on that.
Aye.
Approval of abstract.
I'll make a motion to approve the abstract, $182,808.18.
Second. Discussion?
All right.
Village attorney? Any words of wisdom?
No words of wisdom. Am I there?
Yes, I'm sorry. Somebody was trying
Okay.
to sign into my iCloud Apple account from China. So I just had to deal with that
Okay.
For real?
for real. Never a dull moment. Okay, village mayor, nothing. Trustees?
I had emailed NICEAG twice regarding the LED lights and I have not had a reply yet. She is ghosting me, so stay tuned.
That's not unusual, she did that with Chris for about
I
5 years.
I do have her cell phone number, so that's the next step.
RB1 rezoning, we met this morning, Peter, myself and the attorney. We've got a document. We'll send it out to my little committee. Have them give a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and ship it over here.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Nothing? Okay, public comment? Scott?
Just to touch on the whole video situation and the cleanup. Now, the cleanup, I'm not quite sure, I didn't guess what you guys were planning on doing as part of the cleanup. Plan on hiring somebody within the village or maybe
that is the plan, and I believe it was, well, what I attempted to do was phrase it so that the responsibility would be, if we cannot find a cleaner or a cleaner quits, that the person would be responsible, well, for doing what I did for a whole season, which was cleaning the bathrooms and stuff when we couldn't find a cleaner. So just to, as a backup plan, that's what that was.
Normally, I mean, we were the cleaner of the auditorium for 4 or 5 years, contracted out. Usually in a local event, like if we do an open mic or anybody does a trivia night, usually their response, no, we clean up on our own. We know what the supplies are, we know what we know what cleaners, well, if you have an outside event come in, they have no idea, they just come in, and do everything, which is fine. But, it's a lot, it's really a lot to put on somebody to come and clean. And as far as we start, like I said, we have less events, it probably would be easier, but having 4 or 5 events in a row, and then having like 2 the next week, and everything is just so sporadic. It's really difficult. If you have 2 events in a row and you don't clean in between them, it's a mess. It's a big mess. Because it really makes a big impact, especially when you have, if you have park cleaning in there for the whole month of July, and they're not contracted out to do anything. That place is a total mess for somebody that's a full-time job in July alone. These kids, I mean, they're kids, I understand, but they destroy the place. It's a difficult job to have somebody cleaning up. So I don't know if you do have somebody come in from the local area. I mean, when we took over, it's not just sweeping up. I mean, we had the village purchase a vaccine, so you're not going to sweeping dust into the air, and basically that's what you're doing. So we tried to vacuum it out. So I think it needs to be a little bit more of a, somebody that have to go and tell them what they actually have to go through. So just bring sweeping dust to the other side of the building. Go ahead, interject.
I know it's cleaning. It's just like you think of Carol Burnett and mopping things, but somebody who takes pride in the auditorium and don't say, why don't you do it again? So I don't know. There's a lot of procedures that do come with cleaning of a building you care about. It's just not sweeping. After events, it's locking up the food. It's locking up the garbage can after each event, so it's not out for the animals to come in. It's even if you put it behind the stage in a bag, the animal gets after it. So it's actually getting maybe Twin Bridges coming because they pick up on a Monday, and events usually close up on a Sunday. The last person who's in the auditorium will button up the garbage, put it in, and wheel it out to the curb, and there you go. It's learning how to put the toilet paper in the receptacles. I mean, when we were doing it after all the events, we went in the morning and we checked. We went in after the event was over. We took out all the garbage. We refilled the toilet papers and the paper towel. We made sure the sink was clean. I mean, it's a lot of work that we do, and especially with park. We would go through every aisle of the chairs because there'd be food there or something sticky, and you sweep it up so the animals don't come in. So it's just not taking a broom, it's actually physically looking at every aisle. And for somebody who enjoys to do that stuff, it's no problem. But it's a procedure, and if anybody wants me to make an outline of what you need to do, that you can double check, so that when you do offer it to somebody, this is what they need to do. It's just not going in and getting paid for doing nothing. Okay.
I accept, I think it's a good idea, a great outline, how do you clean the auditorium?
Yes, yes,
And to hand it to somebody who
yes.
has the responsibility.
And I'm more than willing to.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah. You're welcome.
Video?
Matt, I just want to address your point about marketing and publicity. It's a really tough market in the summer. The events I promoted, you can do everything. You got a lot of competition, so it's going to take some strategy.
it sometimes is also based on what the calendar is elsewhere. So, we'll book an event and it's like, oh, it's the Food and Wine Festival. So, it's complex.
No doubt.
Anyone else? Amy?
Tom mentioned you guys are working on the draft policy. If it could be shared with the community before the next meeting, I mean, it's
Yes.
the month of December, which is gonna limit people's stuff, but if we could have it ahead of time, so we could.
Yes,
see
we
it,
will.
that'd be-
We will be
I'm
doing our
supporting
best to
Tom's
put
idea.
the documents that will be discussed on the website 48 hours ahead of time. That's it. Okay, we'll entertain a motion to enter executive session.
Do we still have to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fire department.
Oh, fire department.
For medical finance, to discuss medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the appointment, employment. Aye. We're entering into executive session. Mr. Peterson, you will be joining us.
Of course.
Christine.
You waved her away.
Bye, Ken.
Bye-bye.
I'm driving, especially these kids. Driving.
We didn't jinx it.
What?
We didn't jinx it.
What? Oh. All right, I gotta stop recording this since it is executive session. So, oh, I can't. Oh, wait, let me stop.
Yes.
Okay, never mind, I figured it.